A novel isn't a bunch of black marks that creates words. It's the intention between the words. It's that space after the period where that last concept resonates. And you think, huh. And it raises an expectation. And those expectations need to be managed by the writer so that the correct questions are raised and you're not sending him down a blind alley. And that's where the author meets the reader in the spaces of a novel.
Welcome to The Whole Writer, a place where we talk about what it means to show up as a writer. Not just a better writer or a more productive writer or a published writer, but a whole one. Someone who's grounded in their voice, in their community, in their creative path, even when the world tells them to hustle, compare, or conform. I'm Nicole Meier, a multi-published author and book coach who believes that nurturing the person behind the page is just as important as refining the words on it. Each week, we'll explore the terrain of writing life with honesty, warmth, and practical wisdom, creating space for you to write from a place of wholeness rather than depletion. Whether you're drafting your first manuscript or publishing your fifth book, you'll find conversation and companionship for the journey here. So, settle in, bring your questions and your curiosity, and let's discover what it means to write and live with authenticity and purpose. Welcome on in, listeners. Today, you're in for a special treat because I am with friend and author Kathryn Craft. She has a new craft book coming out. And before we jump into all things novel writing, let me first introduce her properly by sharing her bio. So Kathryn Craft is the award-winning author of 2 novels from Sourcebooks, The Art of Falling and The Far End of Happy. Her 2-decade tenures as dancer, choreographer, dance critic for the Morning Call newspaper in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and freelance developmental editor have merged to inform the perspective that inspired her new release for writers, Crafting Story Movement, Techniques to Engage Readers and Drive Your Novel Forward. Building on her bachelor's and master's degree in education, it has been her great joy to share the craft of writing by mentoring novelists, most recently through her Your Novel Year program, and by speaking at dozens of venues where people thirst to write, from writing groups, conferences, and libraries to inpatient rehabs and grief support groups. She lives with her husband in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Welcome, Kathryn.
Hi, Nicole. It's great to see you again.
It's so good to see you. And for people that aren't familiar with our friendship, the last time we got together in person was a very big conference, I think in 2023 in Chicago. And I didn't know, maybe I knew a little bit about this craft book that you were working on, but I didn't know all of the things of what you're working on. So this is very exciting to me because I'm coming in at the end result.
Are very close to the end.
That's right. Well, so by the time this podcast airs, your book will have launched and we're going to get into all of that. But I thought it'd be nice to start by letting listeners know a little bit more about you. So I know you've worn several hats in the writing world. You've been a novelist, a writing mentor, and now you're the author of this craft book. So I would love it if you could share a little bit about your journey, what insights from all those experiences you pulled for this new resource that you're bringing out.
Okay, well, that's where I love the title of your podcast, The Whole Writer, because I think the most important thing that an aspiring novelist or any novelist needs to remember is they have to bring their whole self to the page. And if you're holding something back, if you haven't faced the problems in your life, you are not going to connect with people. As a matter of fact, Dani Shapiro, are you familiar with her?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I saw on her Facebook page one day, she said, I think that writing a novel is so much more vulnerable than writing a memoir. Because with a memoir, you can choose what to show and what to hold back. In fiction, it's nothing if it isn't all of you. I'm paraphrasing, but I love that concept. And I really found that this process of writing this book couldn't have happened and didn't want to happen and didn't start to happen until I embraced everything of who I am. So, yes, being a developmental editor since 2006 was important. Oh, and also, I just want to say that when I had 2-decade careers and all those things, I am not 150 years old. Those concepts, those careers actually overlapped.
I love it.
But the reason I phrase it with the 2 decades is because I do have depth in each of those areas. So I want to start with the first seed for this. I wrote a chapter for a compilation of essays that Therese Walsh had put together called Author in Progress. That came out in 2016. When the final editing was being done, the Writer's Digest books editor contacted Therese and said, would you see if it's okay if I contact Kathryn Craft personally? And I thought, oh man, what would your first thought be? Edited, right? So my first thought is, oh man, I'm really in trouble. My chapter, the whole premise sucks. I'm going to have to redo everything. And Therese just didn't want to tell me herself. That's how I felt.
Oh my gosh.
And sure enough, she sends me this email, flabbergasted me. She said, you may not know this, but I edited you before when you did an interview with Janice Gable Bashman about the use of macro structures in fiction for the front of the short story and novel writer's guide one year.
Oh, you're kidding.
I had no idea because it was Janice's, she pitched me the interview. And so she dealt with the editor. I had no idea who the editor was. So she'd worked with me. I can't remember if she did an article I did for Writer's Digest too, but she'd edited me several times. And she said, there's just something about your voice and the way you write about writing that would make me feel remiss as the acquisitions editor for Writer's Digest books if I didn't ask, do you have a book in you? Draft book.
Wow.
Now, what do you think I wanted to say?
Oh, I'm so curious how you felt on the inside when she said that.
I said, this is an amazing opportunity. Thank you. I felt like the kid who goes to be a waitress in LA and actually gets discovered by the Hollywood director she's waiting on. That's how I felt.
Great analogy. I love that.
So I said, I'm going to have to think this over. My immediate answer is yes, but let me think it over and pitch you some ideas. Well, let me tell you how many ideas, how many titles I thought of, got rid of, because I am a total craft book geek. You may be too. I have, I'm sure, over 200 titles.
Wow, that's more than me.
That's just craft books. And I learned so much from them. And they were my teachers. So literally, my teachers are looking over my shoulder when I write in my office. I love that feeling. I'm not in this alone. I've got all of this help behind me. So I credit a lot of those people in my acknowledgments. I've only met some of them, but the other people were every bit as much my teacher.
I want to pause right there because that, for any writer listening, I really love that you said that. Obviously, you don't want to write alone. None of us do anymore, but you had all of your teachers and your sort of guides not looking over your shoulder, judging you, but encouraging you behind you on the shelf. And that is such a good reminder for all of us to reframe it that way. These are the people who are cheering you on from their craft books.
Yeah. And what's really cool is that some of my students, like in the year novel year, and even prior to that, people I've done developmental edits for, people who came to my home for many years of sessions, writing on the spot sessions, I call craft writing. We looked at like one little sliver of craft and then tried to apply it to a prompt and come up with something in 45 minutes. And then we would go around and not say, this is excellent, it sucks, but did you use that piece of craft so that you get practice with it right away, not just stick it in a folder and never look at it again? Well, some of those people have said, they'll send me little emails. Kathryn, I just moved my most important word to the end of the sentence so it would, in quotes, resonate.
It's great, though. Look at how that fresh inspiration completely sparked something new in them.
I know. And I was just catching up with one of my Your Novel Year people she was in the 2020 cohort. And I know that because she was in the class that started out in my home and then had to change to fully online. I've kept it on fully online ever since. But I had met her at the 2018 Philadelphia Writers Conference. And she came up to me afterwards and she said, my mind is abuzz. I just connected with everything you said so much. And while we were catching up on a FaceTime, she said, Kathryn, I will never forget something you said at the 2018 conference. And I'm like, are you serious?
I love it.
Sometimes forget what I said yesterday, And she said, perspective is a blade that you can cut into your story with on a slant.
Wow. Good one, Kathryn. That's very effective.
Yeah. So anyway, it's been fun that the way I feel about my mentors, I'm stepping into a lineage in a way, pass or fail,
Yes.
I'm putting it out there. And so I had a friend who was very pro this idea. You need to write this craft book. Now, this is your year of yes. You just have to say yes. Well, I was saying yes. I had no compunction about it, but I really needed to bring something new to a canon that I already knew was very robust because I own them all.
Yes. Did it feel intimidating?
Yeah, because what do I have to say that's different?
Spoken like a true writer.
Yeah. Or teacher,
Or teacher.
Yeah, I'm part of a lineage.
Yes.
As all artists are, really. I mean, we've all probably been to museums and seen art students sketching in the style of Picasso, and writers do this all the time. So then Therese Walsh had another role to play, unwittingly, in 2022, which was still dicey whether people were going to meet in person again. So she had one of her Writer Unboxed unconferences, which she calls it that because it's all about craft and the writing life. There's no pitch sessions, there's no business writing, no marketing. It's just down and dirty, roll up your sleeves and plunge your hands into your manuscript sort of stuff.
I love the whole concept of an unconference. So that makes me so happy that it's still just thriving.
I'm thrilled too, because my home conference, the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group, as soon as the scale kind of tilted toward more self-publishing, all the sessions were about marketing.
Yeah, I get it.
Lost its allure to me. Now I think they're kind of going back. I hope they continue that way. But anyway, so the session I pitched to Therese, which she accepted, was called Get That Story Moving, because it's the opposite of articles I've written about inadvertent ways that writers stall their own stories. And the good news is that all 13 ways they stall their stories came from one person's developmental edit. I felt bad pointing it out, but if she would just get out of her way,
right,
it'd be really good. There were so many good things. Well, she went on to publish that exact book.
Which I love. That's great.
Yeah.
Did you use her developmental edit as an example way back then for the public to view?
No.
I was going to say, that's hard. Yeah.
I disguised all sorts of stuff. And I made an E instead of a she and all of that. But she did the work. And I know that you're familiar with this too. Some people just think it's going to be easier. And when it isn't, it's over.
Yes.
They gave it a go.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
There's not one go.
Yeah. So true.
There's go and go and go and go and go. And then there's the end. Oh, yeah, I thought that was the end. Now it's the end. Oh, no, push that aside. No, it's really the end. Now it's the end,
Absolutely. I'm nodding. And no, people can't see me, but I'm nodding because it's so relatable.
Yeah. So I did this session on Get Your Story Moving, and something shifted underneath me. Like the whole way I understand craft, the whole why of it just blossomed in this new way. And I thought, I have so much experience to give this fresh take on story movement, taking my movement background, which I compartmentalized as just completely different thing I was interested in earlier in life.
So share that with writers who don't know you. You have an extensive history with dance.
Yeah, I danced for about 20 years. I was never a professional dancer. I was in a college dance company. I won some choreography awards. I was a professional choreographer. I did get paid for that. And I did have a New York debut, which was exciting.
Oh, love it.
In a piece by a professional choreographer. But that was the extent of it. I don't want to pretend I was prima ballerina material or anything like that. But very interestingly, considering that dance is a voiceless medium, it's where I found my voice. It's where my artistic director looked at me and said, this is interesting to me. Look at this group here. Look at this person here. And then her husband, who was the dean of the English department, wrote this whole thing about what he thought one of my dances meant. And all I thought was, it's an individual versus the group. And he said, it's democracy versus communism. It's like all of these heady subjects. And I was like, no, it's a dancer in a group. But how cool is that?
So cool.
Like, I told a story about a person who's trying to find their place in a group and is rejected. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? It raised questions. This is what storytelling does. It raises questions that invite the reader in. And that is the beginning of story movement.
Oh, I love it.
Drawn toward an idea, a concept. That's the very start of it. And then you need to draw the reader into the concept as well. Where you can meet on the page, not in all of those black marks, because the black marks are like the steps in dance. We learn many steps in dance. It's almost always ballet based, but modern dancers have things they call, then you do the whirligig. They just make up names, but it isn't the execution of the whirligig. It isn't the pas de bourrée or any other dance term. It's what each individual dancer brings to the intention of moving from the whirligig into the pas de bourrée. It's in space. And that's where the author meets the reader, in the spaces of a novel. A novel isn't a bunch of black marks that creates words. It's the intention between the words. It's that space after the period where that last concept resonates. And you think, and it raises an expectation. And those expectations need to be managed by the writer so that the correct questions are raised and you're not sending them down a blind alley.
Right. Oh, Kathryn, that's such a beautiful way of demonstrating that. And I'm thinking of all the sort of the plot-based writers out there who are so concerned about the plot twist and catching the reader by surprise, catching the protagonist by surprise. But we forget about the intention and the spaces where the writer meets the reader and the character. And I love that you brought that in because it just sort of takes it away from that sort of hard-hitting approach into more of an intentional approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the very first concept was that movement is a transfer of energy. We summon it sometimes from the ground. In Tai Chi, you pull the energy up from the ground and you pull it up through your body and you put it up into the air. I'm raising my hands up. You can see me. I'm flicking the energy into the air and opening my arms and just watching it twitter down toward the ground. And that is the kind of movement that begins a step in dance. You're pressing off the ground and lifting your leg to move it intentionally to another place.
It's a lot like yoga too.
Yeah. And there's, even in Shavasana, which is the death pose, right? You're not still. You can never be still if you are alive. Even after death, there are still chemical reactions going on. There's decomposition. Sorry, I don't mean to get into a really gross area here, but there's always something going on at the cellular level in the human body. There's the heart pumping, the exchange with the lungs, sending oxygen to the brain. And all of that contributes, is what the author contributes in movement to what they're putting on the page. We move our hands when we type, or if you're the type to use longhand, I love the concept of you're taking ideas from the zeitgeist in through your head, filtering them through your experience, sending them down through your blood into the hand and pouring them onto the page. I mean, these are beautiful, beautiful concepts that help us connect to our writing.
Yeah. And I also, when you were talking about that, Kathryn, it's also a way of staying present. Unfortunately, my listeners can't see you. You're showing the energy moving through the body, but it's important to stay present in the work because a lot of times our brain is moving a million miles a minute to the next plot point, the next piece of the character's development. But what you're talking about brings it back to intention, brings it back to presence, and keeps the energy focused where it should be. I love that.
I have to apologize to your listeners because I am very handsy. And I think it is part of my dance background because I can't stop the movement. But every candid photograph that's been taken of me in conference sessions, I may be pausing, but my hands are a blur.
It's great. It's very helpful. It's very helpful because sometimes we need to see it demonstrated in a physical way.
Yeah. So once that conference session happened, that Get Your Story Moving, I thought, oh my gosh, I have such a wealth of experience and material. And I started to investigate in various novels I'd been reading. Why does this passage stand out like a golden light to me? It's always story movement of one sort or another. So I started to write down all these different forms of story movement. Sometimes it's the simple movement of a protagonist through her environment. But if it's goal-oriented, there's intention.
Yes.
Different. You never see a dancer come out of the wings and then just wander around looking up at the lights and, oh, there's the audience. They always have a reason for coming on stage. And sometimes we forget that, especially beginning writers, but there's
all of us
fanatic about it. You have to say, why is your character going to be in this scene? What do they want? Why is this other character coming on? We often treat our secondary characters like tools, but no one wants to be a tool in someone else's story. And secondly, a hammer always acts like a hammer. We want something a little more unpredictable. We want a wholly fleshed out human being who has their own needs, desires, limitations, prejudices, all of those things that they bring to the scene. And then that's when a story really pops.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so this actually offers me a beautiful segue because I wanted to talk about the extensive research and reading and sharing that you do in your new book from other people's works. You use them as examples, you give your own insights, you do a little bit of analyzation. So can you talk about that? Is this something you did in your mentoring with other writers in the early days, or is this something new that came to you recently?
It probably started when I started blogging for the Blood Red Pencil in 2008. And I had a periodic theme called Caught! Exclamation point, an author doing something right. And I was pulling excerpts from books at that time, and I used some of those. For example, probably my most seen blog post of all time was way back as one of those posts because it was caught. Stephanie Meyer caught doing something right or whatever.
The author of Twilight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which people love to diss her.
Yeah.
Authors, oh, this is vapid writing. She just had a dream and then she thought she could write a novel, whatever. Well, anytime somebody hits the New York Times bestseller list right out of the gate, a heretofore unknown person who was never on TikTok and became first or anything, and then continued to sell really well for an entire series of books, she has something to teach us.
Yes, and look how many people, books like that, her as an example, got reading who never really read more than a People magazine. There's so many books out there that people like to tear apart. It's like they're getting people reading again, and that's really important.
Exactly. And not only that, keeping them hooked between books.
Yes.
People had to wait for the next book. How many other series could they have started? Older series that were equally as good, maybe even better, that could have sated their desire for a series and they just forgot to come back. No one forgot to come back. They just, installment after installment for one reason: delayed sexual gratification. If you can keep two people who clearly are into each other apart for that many books, you too can be a New York Times bestseller.
Or just be really good at writing story tension. Yes. I love that, Kathryn. I wasn't expecting you to say that, and that just gives me a little thrill.
Well, of course, delayed sexual gratification is tension. And Donald Moss had talked in one of his books about microtension and to play a game where you pick up a book, pick up your own manuscript, open it to any page, and do you have at least one aspect of tension on that page? If not, fix it now. I played that game so many times with Twilight, the first installment of, I read the whole series. No, I love beautiful prose. I love a perfectly crafted sentence. But still, I read the whole series because I wanted to know what happened. She raised so many questions that she didn't answer. That's another real trick to maintaining tension. And tension is story movement. You are on a hook and you will be dragged anywhere to find out what the answer to the question is. So every single time I played the microtension game with Twilight, I found something. And it might be as small as a dialogue tag that says, well, that's what I said, but it wasn't what I meant. Ooh, what does that mean? I'll read on to find out what she means by that. From techniques small to very large, I've been drawn to certain segments of books, excerpts that feel like colored with golden light. I remember them for a very long time. And I went back and analyzed them, and always it boiled down to one of those subcategories of story movement. And then I started reading interviews with authors, which has become like one of my favorite things. What gave you the idea for this? Why did you think it could go the distance? And something tugged at their heart or piqued their curiosity, and they just had to know. And so that's the first movement, is our interest in our own story. And if ever it seems boring or whatever, that maybe can't be fixed. Maybe you should just set it aside, because you can't ask someone else to tell you what to love about your own story. That has to be true blue. It has to rise up from within you, from all your experiences, all your own wounds. That's why we need to be vulnerable on the page. And so, just to wrap up the whole writer thing, in light of that, I have used every aspect of who I am, who I was as a dancer, who I still am as a dancer, because in my first novel, my protagonists has to take a lengthy leave of absence from dancing. And she says, well, I used to be a dancer. And her mentor says, oh, that's ridiculous. If you were once a dancer, you're always a dancer. It's a way of thinking. I came up with that in my own mind and never accessed it until get that story moving. And then I had story movement. So I went to contact Rachel Randall. She had left Writer's Digest books about 4 years earlier, so I lost my contact. In the meantime, though, self-publishing had been burgeoning as a well-respected sector from being kind of the joke it used to be, the self-gratifying thing.
It's come a long way.
And in nonfiction, because a lot of people want these books to sell in the back of the room. They know and understand their expertise. They don't need to seek the validation of somebody else saying it.
Or wait 3 years before it's on the shelf.
Exactly.
Well, I so appreciate that you brought in so many examples from other writers, from other author interviews into your craft book, because people love a good example. It's one thing to try and tell people. It's another thing to show them, to be very cliche about writing, but you're showing them true examples. And something else you brought up was Donald Moss.
I did.
So I want to point this out because I was thrilled for you about this. So getting Donald Moss to write your foreword is no small feat. He's so well respected in the industry. So I would love to know what that experience was like. Was this something that you just envisioned this is going to happen? Or is it something that you just said, I'm just going to go for it? I didn't think about it. I just went for it.
Well, I'm going to be vulnerable here and tell you
Yes.
this story. I used to be represented by his agency, and I had left that agency. And yet I'm still his colleague at Writer Unboxed. So I see him at the uncons. And I think I picked up in some of his comments on my blog posts that he doesn't always comment, but he had a respect for the things I was saying. And Peggy Fink was my roommate at the 2023 Uncon. You know Peggy?
Yes, and because we were all together in Chicago, remember?
Right, yeah. She was there at the same table. And we're always roommates at WWA events. She also is represented by the Donald Moss Agency. So I was telling her that I was trying to get up the nerve to ask Don to do the forward. And she says, you should totally do it. We're all friends. And I said, friends. I still feel like the acolyte, and he's the guru. And she went down for whatever. And I was supposed to meet Don that day for breakfast. I got that far, but I didn't know if I could really do it. And so I was sitting in the lobby where I was supposed to meet. And he didn't come down off the elevator until like 10 of 8. And he was speaking at 8. And he just blew right past me and went out the door. And I saw him come back with a coffee and a bag. And I said, oh, Don, did you forget? And he goes, oh my God. I'm so embarrassed.
Oh.
I said, don't worry about it. He said, I have a session right now, but let's look at my calendar. Let's do dinner tomorrow night. Do you want to bring Peggy along? Whatever. So I said, look, if you have 10 minutes right now, I just need to talk to you right now because I could not live.
Oh my gosh.
I was so nervous. And I literally had, that saying, I had to pull up my big girl panties.
Yes.
Just get her done. And so I'm sitting next to him on the couch and I'm like, I've written this book, Crafting Story Movement, Techniques to Engage Readers and Drive Your Story Forward, where I'm pulling from my dance background. And he says, that sounds fascinating. And I said, I'm wondering if you would review the manuscript with an eye toward writing the foreword. He says, of course I would. I'm surprised you felt like you even need to ask. Well, what am I going to do? Assign it to him? Nicole, I burst into tears.
Oh, Kathryn. I mean, anyone listening can appreciate because it's so hard to ask anyone for a blurb, a review, let alone a forward, let alone a guru in the industry. Kathryn.
I just lost it. And he says, why are you crying? And I said, I don't know.
Oh,
Because I think because of leaving your agency and I didn't know how you felt about it. It's like we've never talked about it. And he said, Kathryn, it's your career. You need to do the best thing for you. That's always true, even if that means leaving my agency. I mean, he wasn't my agent, but still.
yes.
And that was such a lovely thing to say. So can I read you my favorite part?
Yes, you can. What a beautiful exchange between the two of you.
I know. This is my favorite thing. He said, when Kathryn writes, movement is a transfer of energy, or explains why movement on stage is most gripping on a diagonal, she is not just spinning fancy metaphors for writing. She is opening practical approaches to creating story momentum. I love this book. You might think at this point that there is nothing new to say about the craft of fiction, but there is, and Kathryn is saying it here.
Oh, Kathryn. I read that too. I got a little choked up for you. I mean, really, look at all of your life's work that you've come to this point to culminate into that testament of what you're bringing to the table. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. I feel like readers and writers are definitely going to want to know when the book comes out, where they can find it, where they can find you, how can they connect with you?
October 7th is the big day, and it should be available on Amazon, and any bookstore should be able to order it if it's not on their shelves. And my website is Kathryn, Kathryn, Craft, CRAFT.com.
I love it. Thank you for sharing everything about your forthcoming book. Readers and writers, I really encourage you, if you're curious about the craft of novel writing, the craft of storytelling, how we can talk about movement and dance and all things Kathryn Craft, I really encourage you to just run out and purchase the book. Thank you so much for being here today, Kathryn.
It was so much fun. Thank you for your interest and especially for your dedication to the whole writer. I love that concept, and I wish you the very best with your podcast.
Thank you, Kathryn. Okay, listeners, we will see you next time on The Whole Writer.
If you want to check out my coaching programs for fiction writers, visit NicoleMeier.com. That's MEIER. And if you like this episode, I'd love you to take a minute to leave a rating and review for this podcast. This will help more writers like you to discover the show and to get going on their writing journey. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, happy writing, everyone.